evening, everyone. And it's Lilia and Jonathan here from the Health Hub. Good evening, Jonathan. How are you?
Good evening. It's Jonathan and Lilia here from the Health Hub. Hello, Lilia.
So, yes, I hope everybody's having a lovely evening. We are on to chat about the incredible superhuman protocol and just in general the biotherapies that are available at the Hub, because we're very aware that a lot of people don't know what these things are and if it could benefit them. So we're going to be having a discussion, and you guys can ask your questions, and we will do our very best to answer it. So there's Catherine. Hi, Catherine. Lovely to see you. How you doing? So listen, we'll just start off with a little introduction for those that have not met you before, because you created my dream healing centre without me even knowing it. And you've already had it there for about, coming on 5 years now. So do you want to just give a little overview as to why you thought you needed to get this information out to the public?
Well, some people would know already I have my own health problems, and one of them was a heart issue some 9 years ago. And I was doing rehab and so on at the Royal Alexandra Hospital in Paisley, a bit thinking it wasn't very likely to help. It did help, but later on I discovered that exercising with oxygen was something people were doing in the States with tremendous benefit. And when I read all the things that could happen when you had oxygen in the equation, extra oxygen, pure oxygen, I thought this is something that needs to be explored. So I imported something for my own use. And quite frankly, the first time I used it, 20 minutes later, I felt, Lilia, like I'd had a spring clean. And that went on from there, where I discovered some other things like pulse magnetic therapy and infrared light therapy, which were kind of in the field of emerging new therapies. So I got a huge benefit from this, and friends and family started using. Lots of people had a sore shoulder here, a sore muscle there. So lots of family asked, can it help? And then I had a major eureka when at some point a gentleman with a very bad heart who was getting a lot of angina when he exercised came to have a test out the invitation of his daughter, and he could barely get through a 5-minute warm-up without the oxygen. That's the first part of it, that warm-up. So, and then he went a full 15 minutes when we added the oxygen without any pain, no angina. And he came in, he was very white and pallid, and he got off pinked up, and he looked a completely different person. And I was just astounded by this. So that's what that experiences like that and several others just convinced me this needed to be available. But that was the beginning, Lilia.
Yes, absolutely. And, that's what we're finding now, even, in Heal Scotland with the festivals, etc., the people that are presenting, they found their own way to much better health, and they obviously are really keen to share that information with others, which I think is pretty normal and pretty human thing to do. So thank you for that. Now, obviously, I've been kind of dipping my toe in the biotherapies for the last 6 months when I've been up at yours, but really, obviously, only since moving full time have I really, obviously been talking to people who have been using them and having my own personal experience. Tomorrow is the end of my first month on the superhuman protocol 3 times a week. So I'm going to be doing all my measurements, and let's see. But let's talk about how I feel, which is really probably more important to me than what the machines are going to say, which is I feel much fitter and stronger, which was not a reason I was doing it. I was doing it because of this tightness in my lower back and in that old scar. I thought, let me see if I can make an impact on that. So it's been really interesting I wouldn't have said that I was low in energy. I mean, I get tired, obviously, like everybody else, but usually after 14 hours working. But I definitely can feel a lightness in my step. I feel so much fitter in 4 measly weeks. So obviously I'm going to be keeping it on to a degree. But can you tell me what have you seen in the last 5 years with the superhuman protocol?
So it turned out I didn't actually set out to achieve what we did achieve. I just added these various modalities to the mix. So the oxygen therapy, the pulse magnetic therapy, and infrared light therapy. And it only just happens to turn out that these are the essential life ingredients that every single one of our 50 trillion cells needs. So, I could open just by saying you don't have to be unwell to get a benefit if your cells are working properly. And even if they are, they can always work a little better. And so, so we recharge the electrical potential in the cells. We get oxygen flooded through the system, getting all the organs working nicely. And we add the lovely infrared light at the very end of the procedure. So really, we've got the essential ingredients that make cells work better. And if your cells are working better, you work better. Things go wrong at a cellular level and things need to be fixed up at a cellular level.
Absolutely. And it's just a charge, because I always teach, before I met you and understood, really particularly the superhuman protocol, was that we have over the years and over the decades, sunscreen, keeping the sun off our face, plastic in our clothes, sunglasses, contacts, etc. The light's not getting to the body, and everybody's so worried about getting old, putting all these stuff that actually stop these powerful rays that synthesize our vitamins and actually give us energy. And obviously the plastic in the soles of the shoes is another thing, keeping us away from the free flow of electrons. And obviously we're not out breathing the fresh air because we live in Scotland and it's pretty miserable 6 months of the year. We still have some really nice trees and forests, but in so many countries we've just literally cut ourselves off from our actual power source of energy, which is nature. So inadvertently, with the superhuman, you're bringing all that we're lacking from being outside back into the body to give it this level of energy. Now, it's a 3-step process, which starts with PEMF, pulse electromagnetic frequencies, then we move on to oxygen, and then we move into the red light. So can you explain why that order?
Well, the order helps. You can sometimes mix around a bit, but the best way, it seems to be, is to prepare the blood to receive oxygen. And so the pulse magnetic therapy, or the PEMF, pulse electromagnetic field therapy, to give it its full name, I've got a phone on. What's that? Turn my volume down a bit.
I don't know. It sounds like a fire alarm. It's okay. Hi, Laura. Hi, Lee.
That's better. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can't hear you now. No, you've muted. That's you. Muted. Hi, Lee. You're muted again, Jonathan. You just unmuted yourself a minute ago. Can you not click on the... That's it, you're unmuted. But what is that noise?
Hello.
That's it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah,
I can't hear you, Lilia.
Oh, well, I
don't know. Is your phone mic on?
Yes. No, I don't have my phone here. So you can't hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me? You must have touched something. Hi, Alex. How you doing?
Hello. Oh.
Has Janet burnt the dinner? Do you want to go out and come back in? I can't lift it up a bit. Up a bit. Up. No, up a bit. I can't read it.
I hear you now.
Oh, you hear me now?
Yeah, through. I turned the volume down trying to get rid of that horrible screech. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Okay, that's good. Well, listen, let's go back.
Yep.
Oh, hi, Kathleen. How you doing? Hi, Kia. Hi, Letizia. Now there's somebody trying to phone. Hi, Lee.
There we go.
So we're talking about why we would do, in the ideal world, the pulsed electromagnetic frequencies first.
Yeah. And it prepares it. You want me to lead on? So it prepares the blood to receive oxygen. And one of the reasons it does that is that when you pulse the body with a powerful magnetic field, which is a powerful magnetic field, you are activating the red blood cells because they've got iron in them, they've got heme. And being a metallic basic, it responds very nicely to magnetism and produces a charge in the red blood cells. And that makes the red blood cells move very freely. They repel each other. Sometimes they stick together, especially if people are unwell or elderly unwell people, especially. They form a rouleau and they don't move through the circulation so well. So separating the red blood cells gives about 40% extra surface area. And if you know that one red blood cell can hold 10 million atoms of oxygen, there's a pretty little factoid to sleep on tonight. Then extra 40% is pretty meaningful. So that's one of the things that happens with PEMF. It also recharges the membrane cell voltage, which is a very important part of the entire cell function, because we mustn't forget that we are very electric, and hence why grounding is important, and why the charges in all of our cells, which are involve the use of electrons, are very the charge in that's very important. So the first step is the pulse magnetic, and then people move on to the exercise with oxygen or the hyperbaric. So two different ways of getting oxygen into the system. I started off with the exercise with oxygen because it was a quicker therapy. It was 20 minutes compared to an hour and a half. And bluntly, when I started out, the cost of the hyperbaric was more than I was willing to invest in. So, and as I said, the very first time I tried exercise with oxygen, I felt like I'd had a spring clean. It was an extraordinary feeling. And that helped my breathing. My at-rest heartbeat came way down. My sleep got better. My breathing, I was getting lovely full lungfuls of air. And this was so reassuring. And for anyone who's ever had a health condition where they're a bit uncertain about their fitness, or especially where the heart's involved, people lose confidence. And by gently going at things and just listening to one's own body, realizing that the body's coping, it's doing fine, and it gave you the opportunity to push the boat out a bit, and that translated into more fitness in the outside world without the oxygen, just going about life's business. So the very last of the three protocols is to indulge in beautiful infrared and near infrared light. And most people are very familiar with infrared being red because you can see it, but the near infrared is arguably more therapeutic and even more important, and that's the part of the spectrum that we can't see. So but it penetrates, and people don't, I used to think sunshine just stops at the skin and that's it, but it doesn't. It goes right the way through. And when I was a kid, we used to shine a torch actually up our noses, and our whole noses went red. And you do it at night, just for fun. And it just shows how translucent the body is. And actually that sunlight, when it reaches down to a cellular level, it's pushing oxygen into the cell and into the mitochondria. And it's also adding free electrons, which go into part of the energy cycle, otherwise known as the Krebs cycle, in which they make adenosine triphosphate. I took a while to remember that one. But anyway, that's all part of the cycle. So red light is incredibly important. And what have we done in the real world? We've got rid of all the incandescent bulbs. We don't use open fires anymore. And basically, this infrared part of the whole spectrum, which is probably 80% of the sun's output in the range that we use, is actually lost to us. And it's the reason why dogs go and lie down in front of a fire. They just love it. They're dosing themselves with beautiful infrared. It's so healing. It opens up all the capillaries. And often when people get off our full-length light bed, they're pinked up and they just look like different people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, my own experience has been quite powerful. And I think what always interests me about the body is sometimes you're trying to heal one thing and you inadvertently heal something else, because it's not really us that decides what the body's going to heal first. It's the body that decides what's going to heal first. And, and this kind of Herring's law, which says things will often heal in the order that we got them. So it's so interesting, the results. So, and that's why we know for a fact, when people start to get more charged at that cellular level, they're going to feel better. And we're inundated with people with chronic and debilitating fatigue. So that's one of the reasons I think it's so exciting. But also like your son Tom always talks, we're interested in people our kind of age and chronic autoimmune disease, but there's a phenomenal other range of people that can really benefit from these life biohacking into the system, which is obviously the sports, etc. So do you want to talk a little bit about how it can affect performance and especially speed up the healing process if you're an athlete and you're injured?
Yeah. Well, oxygen is central to all healing. And just in the passing, a lot of people are not very familiar with the function of the liver, but it's an incredible organ and carries out 200 or 300 different routine procedures to get rid of toxins in the body. And it uses a lot of oxygen. And when you first get on the exercise oxygen machine or on the treadmill, it's only 20 minutes, 15 minutes with the oxygen. When you first get onto that, the liver's taking up all the oxygen. But then what happens after that is the oxygen goes around and all of the organs get bathed in oxygen. So that's delightful. And that makes everything work better. It makes the brain work better. It can kill your brain fog, get rid of that. It can help your breathing. It can help your general feeling of energy levels. But healing especially is terribly important. But athletes have a need to heal because they're stressing their bodies a lot. So all of these things are very restorative. If you give the body what it needs, it gives it oxygen, you give it some electrical charge, and you give it some beautiful infrared. It's got 78, 90% of what it needs for healthy regrowth. And add a little bit of healthy nutrition and a little exercise, and you're almost home and dry.
Yes, and I think that's another thing that's worth talking about is that much as, well, certainly for me, with the clients I'm working with, superhuman's just a no-brainer. But we also can use these biotherapies on an individual basis. So for red light, a lot of people just love coming for the red light. And of course, the UVB light. Do you want to talk about the UVB light, which is a cabinet that's in the same room?
You were asking earlier, Lilia, you were talking about athletes, and just a little point of information. Some well-to-do CEOs in America on the 74th floor of their skyscraper head office, they have an EWAT unit, an exercise oxygen therapy in there, because it turns out that if you are really wanting to increase your athleticism, a 20-minute workout where you're really pushing yourself and you're really gunning it, you can do the equivalent of a 2-hour workout. So for someone who's pressed for time, it's pretty important. So coming back to UVB, which is in our hub, is in the same location as the infrared light bed. So while you're partly unclothed, you can go into the UVB, and that's where the UVB is the wavelength, that part of the ultraviolet spectrum that is responsible for creating vitamin D in the skin. So we recommend for anybody who's got any skin issues, like psoriasis or eczema, that this is a wonderful thing. And a lot of people who suffer from skin conditions are always saying, it's weird, when I go for a sunshine holiday, all my skin conditions clear up. Well, there's a surprise. And if you live inside all the time, you don't get any vitamin D, which is one of my pet rants. So vitamin D is so important. And so we've got some great results. People come, they have 20 minutes in great comfort, lying in relaxed form on the infrared light bed, which, by the way, makes a ton of melatonin at a cellular level, different from the melatonin that comes out of your pineal gland in the late evening when you're getting ready for bed. So you can go from one into the other. Now, the UVB is pretty intense. It's a unit that's typically used similarly by the NHS when they're available and they have staff available for you. And it's got very special lights made by Philips, which condense the energy specific wavelengths for making vitamin D. So very useful, and you might start at only 30 seconds and the maximum exposure is probably only 3 minutes. So it's very, very quick. So UVB gets through the skin and into the cholesterol, which is a layer under the skin, and that's where the vitamin D gets made. How exciting is that? Of course, if you are on a statin and you're also taking some protection factor, the whole vitamin D program falls completely, goes to zero. So you have to think about maybe limited exposure to sunlight, yes, but get to a point of pinking up and then cover up and get out of it in the shade for a couple of days, and then you can start again. So that's what I would recommend. But that's the UVB. So I went off track a bit there, Laura.
No, I love that, because usually when I do the sunlight bed, the Theralight bed, I then just do a minute or so to get my vitamin D, as well as taking it, obviously, orally, the magical stuff that we get from Spain. Hi, Shaz, how you doing? And hi, Lee. Yeah, there's lots of comments coming in here. UVB for skin conditions. And the thing is, obviously, you're only in it for you start off at 30 seconds. It can go up, I noticed, to 4 minutes. But and we got people that just come for that, and they're just kind of in and out again. We're just so lucky to have all this equipment that you've got in Scotland, and all under the one roof, which is obviously a big thing for so many people, that they can access it all, because when I did a bit of market research and what people would like us to have, that was one of the key things they all came back with, is having everything under the one roof.
Yeah.
So hi Debbie, how you doing? So let's talk about PEMF, because I had my own, not personal experience, but one of my friends, Linda, that you met, that came up for the dinner, she had a broken foot. She was in a boot when she came to Skye. And of course, I had our portable PEMF machine and a little red light mat. And in 5 days, I could not believe it. She was walking without the boot, and she'd actually been getting down on her bum to get down the stairs. And I'm like, what? Is that, was that of course it was. It's speeding up the healing. And I suppose to what degree it speeds it up will depend a little bit on your kind of general health, I'm assuming. So what have you seen in terms of speeding up the healing process?
Yes, well, the PEMF, first of all, it tends to seek out areas of inflammation, and you can feel that from the pulses. So we always know when we've found a point of inflammation, because it's a bit more sensitive, and it can be inflammation in a nerve or inflammation in soft tissue. And there are very few things that will get into bones and into tendons and such like, which is an area where athletes get strains and sprains. So the combination, in passing about that subject, red light and pulse magnetic therapy are the go-to therapies if you have a problem with tendons and those sort of things. But sometimes when people break a bone, what happens is the bones don't knit. And so instead of being in a plaster for like 6 weeks and then on the mend after that, they're still in a plaster 3 months later. The bones are not knitting. But when you introduce the PEMF into the equation, then what happens is the osteoblasts start to reform, and the bone gradually forms a sort of jelly junction between the broken ends, and then that turns into bone ultimately. So that's the sort of thing that's going on. It's affecting everything from a healing point of view. It reduces swelling, sometimes quite dramatically and unexpectedly. Sometimes it almost seems miraculous. I don't want to over egg this, but you can
No, I agree.
experience it, haven't you?
I absolutely agree. It's, you don't want to kind of exaggerate, and then people to be disappointed. But yeah, Kia, that's right. You told me that you brought your son with a broken toe, and the PEMF and the red light healed it in 4 weeks. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many stories like that. Catch up later, still working in information. Yeah. Hi, Kate. Yeah, I mean, there's so many stories. And the thing is, when they're stories, they're kind of anecdotal, which is a word that makes it sound like it's just a story when it's actually what happened. And it's very difficult to measure a lot of that stuff because, it's individual, to the person. But let's talk as well about, because obviously I was saying to you today about the oil in the skin, and I heard this from the Dr. Perry, the big six guy. He was saying if you put too much soap on the skin, you're washing that oil off, and you're inhibiting the body's ability to synthesize the vitamin D, which I found really interesting because as a nutritionist, what we always talk about is your essential fat profile, which is obviously the semi-permeable bilayer of your omega-3, 6, and 9, which is this kind of, oily, doesn't set at room temperature, but it's thicker than water, and it's not as thick as something that's set. And this has to allow, so when I always talk to people about how the sun hits the skin, and if you have a good essential fat profile, if you're well hydrated, then it can send the information, the full spectrum of colours of the rainbow through the skin. So it was interesting to hear this guy say this: don't soap your skin before you go out in the sun because you're going to inhibit and so I'm assuming that's going to be the same for the Theralite.
Absolutely. Well, I'm thinking the light particularly. Polar bears have white fur because it's full of air in their hair follicles, and that's an insulator. And you can imagine on a human, if you've got no oil in your skin, it's very dry and flaky, and it doesn't transmit things well. So if you have an outer dermis which is got some oils in it, it's actually more translucent, and the oils are a vehicle to carry the light into the sorry, I try to talk too fast. Into the statins stop. Anyway, that works really nicely, and it gets into the under the skin and through to where it has to get to. And that vitamin D that's formed under the skin is actually it's the cholesterol. There's the word I was looking for. It is actually the beginning of a long chain of events, and some of the wavelengths of these lights go towards the vitamin D, which goes towards things like bone health. Vitamin D hugely increases the immunity factor. The immune system can't work without it. And if you've got good enough vitamin D, you'll weather most viruses and most storms, including things like COVID, even though you may have other morbidities. Those is what the statistics show. So it's a really, really important thing. Needs to be taken with K2 and some magnesium to make the best of it. But it's a whole cascade of events. It'll help you sleep better. It gives you more energy. A lot of people just found their energy lacking just taking vitamin D. It takes a while to rebuild your levels if you're low with vitamin D. So it may take 3, 4, or 5 weeks to get back up. And let's face it, most of the population have insufficient vitamin D for full protection. And the level of the 50 nanomoles per liter that are sometimes recommended at a doctor level, they just call it adequate, and that's all it is. We really need to be up in the 90s to 100s if you want full protection from all of these things.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, it's, as you say, that it leads to a cascade of events, which is what happens in the body where, in the West, we've kind of separated everything out and everything's working as this magnificent system, which brings us, of course, to the fascia. And obviously I have been so down the rabbit hole with the fascia story and just loving and, blown away by this kind of polymorphic piezoelectric nature of this organ. They're now calling it an organ. And obviously how when it tightens, often with age or with trauma or surgeries, etc., it can cause aches and pains in places that where the pain isn't. The pain is, but the injury isn't. And I think this is the thing, obviously you and I have been talking about that book that I got, and to try and really help, like if you've got plantar fasciitis, for example, it can be the fascia bands in the calf are tight, that's pulling in the foot. And I mean, it's engineering, which of course is your world. But for me, obviously, it's about the letting go, that we understand now that a lot of that information, our stories, our concepts, our labels, our beliefs, our perceptions are stored in this crystalline plasma. So that's when I thought, well, let's get the PEMF going through this fascia and let me start helping people to let go, and also helps to explain why very often in one single PEMF session, people will be like, well, that feels, I mean, that happens regularly. It doesn't happen every single time, but it happens regularly, that people's stiffness or pain, if not dissolves, certainly decreases. And now that we're understanding the fascia, we're like, right, this is why that's having this kind of instantaneous effect. And then, of course, we're looking at, well, what keeps the fascia healthy? And, it's got to be hydrated and it's got to have vitamin D and it's all working in this beautiful, and really all that the biotherapies are doing are replacing what we're not getting out there.
Yeah. Well, Lilia's been educating us all on the world of fascias and so on, and we're in danger of all becoming fascists. But anyway, I think it's wonderful. And one of the things that intrigues me, having only had the basic modalities to work with, is that Lilia's brought her experience along and is using some of the things that she's known about for a long time in conjunction with therapies like PEMF. And the two are so complementary. It's you've had some useful and interesting experiences, I believe.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, from a letting go perspective, when we want this cellular expansion and the light and the cells to be, then you're not going to resist. Well, you can try, but it's a lot harder. So it's very exciting. So hi Fiona, nice to see you. If anybody's got any questions, please pop them into the box. And if you're watching this in replay, we will answer them at another time. So yeah, please let me know if anybody's got any questions that they would like to ask myself or Jonathan. Let's talk a little bit about, well, I'll talk about this week. I've had I think 9 discovery calls, and they've almost all been identical in terms of symptoms: exhausting fatigue, body aches and pains, brain fog. I mean, it's like everybody's saying the same story in just slightly different ways. And that's something, I mean, the GPs are they know they just don't have anything to help. There's not a pill or a surgery that help that. Changes in your diet and obviously, but we all know how difficult it is to change your diet, and we're never going to heal Scotland by asking people to change their diet. But we can get this charge in, which just gives you that lift and helps you to feel that little bit lighter and brighter to make better choices. Would you not say?
Yeah, well, if you ask, I absolutely agree with all you've just explained. I think thinking as you jogged several memory thoughts there, about just generally about healing and how everybody is different. So that's something we recognize, and so we don't always know what's going to happen. And yes, a lot of the feedback that we've got is entirely anecdotal. I mean, there's lots of very kind testimonials of people who've written in saying how much they've been helped or enjoyed the experience of having some of these easy therapies, because with the exception of the exercise, which, by the way, the exercise with oxygen, you're only really going to take your pulse up to a low level like 100, 110. It's just enough to get the blood circulating and the breathing up a little bit to get turbulence. So it's very gentle. So basically, once you've had some of these therapies, you've got this transfer of energy. Basically, you're powered off the national grid, I like to think, limitless source of energy, and why not? It's there for the taking, and it gives a great lift to all the bodily functions. I didn't mention earlier that one of the other things about oxygen therapy and healing, but also PEMF is very good for helping post-operative wounds, and so sometimes we have people who've had surgery, breast surgery, for example, and they've had lymph nodes removed, and there's painful areas and things, and it can greatly reduce the sensations there. I've had personal experience with 3 people with hernias in different parts of their abdomen, and they all got one chap told me he reckoned he had a 30% quicker healing with his second hernia compared with the first one, where he didn't have any PEMF. And one lady I know had a hernia across the top of her tummy, perhaps a bit less usual, and she came along for pulse magnetic therapy in about 2 days after her operation. You can come as soon as that, and she called me the next day to say that all her limited movement had gone away. She was back to full movement, and she had no pain, and she said, I have to remind myself I've had an operation and just to take things easily. So there are countless stories, and they're anecdotal, but unfortunately for people in our position, where we're promoting complementary therapies, nearly everything that we've got is anecdotal, but it's anecdotal in tens of thousands around the world. And there's no money in trying to prove that oxygen is helpful. There's no money in that for any big pharma. So why would they go and do the tests, and why would they test any of these modalities? There's no point. So anyway,
there's great research which I need to show you tomorrow about using the hyperbaric along with chemo and radiation, and how much easier it can make it. But let's answer a few questions. So how long to do these therapies need to be carried out before seeing clear results? Well, that's a very good question. I liken it to like going to the gym. You'll feel better probably after one session, and a lot of people do, especially, let's talk about superhuman here. But also, you're going to get a much better result if you do it for a few months. That's just a given. And then we'd be looking at a maintenance program. Catherine's asking, can you explain the pulse magnetic therapy, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, so the Earth has got a magnetic field which is pretty steady. It's a bit like a standard magnet. It's got a North Pole and a South Pole, which most people are familiar with. It's a very low order of intensity, but it is an important part of making our life operate, making our bodies work. So we're sort of supercharging the magnetic fields, and a lot of people wear simple magnets on a wrist, and not to decry that, but that is not pulsing. And it seems to be that the movement of the pulse through that part of the body, those parts of the body that are conductive, is what creates the goodness. It creates a little micro voltage, a little micro current. So, for instance, when you're using a powerful PEMF like the one we have, which is the PMT 120, which is the big daddy of PEMF units, used in many of the clinics in the States and in Europe for various purposes, and for healing athletes and even healing racehorses. When we're doing this, the muscles pulse, your muscles pulse involuntarily. It's never to the point of discomfort, but we're stimulating the nerves, and then the nerves stimulate the muscles. So it's to do with conductivity, as explained. Red blood cells with a lot of iron in them, so they respond as well, which is why if there's inflammation, there's always extra blood at a point of inflammation. And the PEMF encourages blood flow by opening up all the capillaries. And that's why often people come off a PEMF machine and they look healthy, they look different. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it is. And I think before we move on to the next question, I would like to just talk a little bit about how you can feel a bit of a detox reaction sometimes. Yeah. And again, this is very personal. I definitely had, but I mean, I was doing the sauna, the thought. I mean, I was obviously ODing on the therapies, and also I've got some fungus in my digestive system. So I know what a die-off feels like. It's like, oh, you get exhausted at night and you're just like, I need to go to my bed. There can be headachy things. So, you know, and especially for people who have extreme fatigue, it's a bit like you're not going to ask somebody like that to go out and run a marathon. You bring them in gently, and you can start off with one. So it would end up being very bespoke depending on what it is that's wrong with you. And the other thing that we see is, and I'm pretty sure you'll have seen this as well, Jonathan, it's the same with the breath work. Some people are very weak, and then they have the therapies and they almost instantly feel better. So it's not always a good judge to say, well, if you're very weak, you're going to have a bad reaction to it, because it can be the complete opposite. But we do have to be mindful that you're putting some stress onto the body, and anytime you put stress onto the body, you're going to get a reaction. That's why you're doing it. And that reaction can be if the liver's needing some support, you know, if the routes of elimination aren't completely clean and clear, we maybe need to do some work on that. So we're getting a lot of experience with this. Obviously, Jonathan's had tons of experience with this, but we're also looking at ways to measure it and really, you know, we've got some interesting cases coming in now of what we can achieve in terms of long-term healing for people. So it's hugely, hugely exciting. Like, where's the next question? Laura.
Sorry. I was just going to say, all of these therapies, all of them have a detox function. So, you know, oxygen therapy is detoxing the liver big time, big time. It sometimes even can smell toxins coming out of people's breath. And not that I've personally witnessed that, but it does happen. Then the red light makes a lot of melatonin, which is also a major antioxidant right in a cell where you've got reactive oxygen species. So that's why it's different from what we get from the melatonin at night from our pineal gland. And then the PEMF, in America, they call these big machines, they call them ringers. And the reason is that every time there's a pulse, the cell membrane, there's a microscopic physical movement. And the cell membranes are very clever. They've got a voltage, they're a battery, but they control what goes in and what comes out. And so there's little tiny tunnels which open and close depending what the polarities of the ingredients are. And these get blocked up with toxins. It could be heavy metals, it could be BPA, it could be things like that. And so these little microscopic particles get dislodged, and now they're in the intercellular fluid floating around, intercellular fluid being our internal version of a sea, in which all the nutrients and all the waste gets carried in and out. And so these toxins are now floating around, and we need to get rid of them. And that's why we always ask people to drink copious amounts of water after they've had any of these therapies.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Laura, what would you use, hyperbaric or EWOT for somebody with AFib?
That's interesting. Well, usually AFib is treated with medication. I think you've got to listen to your own body. If you can exercise lightly, even though you have AFib, EWOT would always be quicker. Most people, even if they have AFib, and it depends what kind it is and just how bad it may or may not be, and how limited if it limits their physical activity. If there's a problem with mobility or any issue with exercise-related stress, then hyperbaric would be the better way to go. But it's an hour and a half. There is an interesting point about the hyperbaric, is that you're not breathing pure oxygen, because that would be something you wouldn't want to do if you weren't creating carbon dioxide the energy, with the exercise. But you can oxygenate the plasma in the blood as well as the red blood cells. And the plasma normally sits at only 3% oxygen intensity. But when you give it oxygen either with EWAT or particularly with hyperbaric, the percentage of oxygen in the plasma can go up by 10 times to like 30%. Well, the plasma is getting into all the tiny little nooks and crannies, which the red blood cells are frankly just too big to get into and give off the oxygen. So it's incredibly useful for healing. And that's why, especially for neurological things and arterial issues and things, hyperbarics are very good for that.
Yes, that's great. And I think, what we would say is come up and see us if you can, or get a free visit or a free discovery call, and make sure that that it's tailored the exactly for your body's needs, which may be slightly different from others. And also the other thing that we're really passionate about, and I'm really, is that what are you doing at home, and how can we support what's going on at the hub at home? Because even if you spend 3 or 4 hours a week with us, you're still at home for 6 days and 20 hours, and that's got to be supported as well. Stephanie, what is the recommended treatment plan for PEMF? And I had a little try today and actually felt less tense since. Yes, you would, Stephanie. And again, that would be very bespoke to whatever issue. What we find is we'll put people on the full body mat or the sort of torso mat, and then we'll go to specific areas depending on what you're exhibiting, what symptoms, if there's pain, etc. So again, that would be done in a bespoke way. What I'm also experimenting with is a double paddle on my back and belly, because I want to see what it does to the microbiome. So early days for that yet, but I'm measuring that as well, because we know that oxygen's great for candida and for fungus. And that's a huge, huge issue for so many people. So how much of an impact can we make? How long would it take? Which is what everybody wants to know. And we understand that. But if you liken it to going to the gym, if you go for 6 weeks, you'll see a result. If you go for 3 months, you'll get a better result. If you sign up for 12 months, you'll get an even better result, and you'll teach the body a new way to be. So that's really, much as we would love shortcuts, that we do one workout and we never have to do another one in our life, we're an ecosystem that needs constant tending. No. Lisa, I'm new year researching alternative therapies for a while, and recently been following Quarriers Wellness. Would you recommend a hyperbaric oxygen therapy for a 2-year-old diagnosed with MC? This is where I need my glasses, Jonathan, before you say it. Lupus. Really helpful info. Thank you. Lisa, definitely. We would come up and have a chat or organise a call, and we can talk to you about that, because it's going to help at some level, and very often, because a lot of this stuff is quite new in terms of data, we actually have to try. And what we do know is we'll do no harm. That's the worst that can happen is nothing. But there's also, my friend Kathleen, I think she's on here somewhere, working with a 4-year-old that had autism and made quite significant improvements. So yeah, I would definitely give it a try. And there's other things that I would like to talk to you about as well. So please give us a call. Alex, oh, hi, darling. How you doing? Sign me up for everything. Joking aside, I finally got my prosthetic back after 8 months of not being able to wear, and nearly 2 years of not being able to walk comfortably. And after the hours wearing, all the muscles have been dormant, which is not comfortable. I'm now in a position to start the healing process and learn to walk again. So I'm looking forward to coming to chat with you both. Yeah, definitely. We need to get you some home care as well. But please come up. Would absolutely be honoured to help you. Ainsley, the hub is a beautiful place, full of fabulous people with wonderful therapies. A decision no one will regret. Oh, thanks so much, Ainsley. How are you doing anyway? I've not seen you. Laura, thanks for that. So the hyperbaric could be useful for the early diagnosis of Parkinson's. Yes. Yes is the answer to that. And the PEMF as well. for that. Definitely for the microbiome, be very powerful, but still need diversity to fully function. Absolutely, Letizia. We're well aware of that. We can take care of things, but you're the gardener. We can come in, get the weeds, get it, and get the hedges all cut and get everything sorted. But then at home, it has to be tended to. So I think that's a pretty good run. If anybody's got any last questions, are all these safe for somebody with high cholesterol? Yes, yes, they are. It's just nature. If you can go out in nature, you can come into the hub. Again, we're not, we might have to go gently and easily to start off with, but we might not. I've been doing 10, 20, 20. That's the other thing with the EWOT and the hyperbaric, that is that the EWOTs doesn't take as much time. And because there's two things to think about, the financial aspect, but also the time aspect. Because, to do it 3 times a week, then there is a time for that. You need to leave an hour. So again, we can, a free discovery call is a great way for us to really talk to you and work out the best way for you. And we're happy to do that. We're so excited about what we have here and how we can help people. I mean, it really is. And to get these into your home, we've got to put the website up, Health at Home. Jonathan's researched all the products on there to get red light into your home, because we know my brother can't come out. My daughter's not been able to come out. We really want to get these biotherapies out all over the country and get everybody charged up and everybody feeling better. And, and particularly for people with long COVID and chronic fatigue, there is hope with this, where, some people have been in their bed for years. And I talk to a lot of young people. I'm talking about people in their late 20s and 30s that not wanting to be here because of the level of fatigue and hopelessness. So it's so rewarding. And we know that a lot of people don't understand what biotherapies are. And that's why we want to come on and start doing these chats regularly, so that we can educate you and inspire you and give you some hope. As I say, the worst that can happen is nothing, and that won't happen if you commit. If you commit to charging yourselves.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we want to do is we want to have biotherapy coaches, because here's the thing, you still have to do it. You still have to go on the red light. You still have to get in, I was sitting there, I've got, a treadmill resistance, and I'm like, just do it and get it over and done with. But I'm like, because I'm teaching that body a new trick. You have to have that. You still have to do it. And that's what's lovely about the red light and the PEMF, you just lie there. And if you're really done in and really exhausted, then start there. Just get a gentle bit of PEMF and some sunlight. That's all. And then just slowly but surely over the weeks. And that's what some people do. They just start there, and then you can add in the oxygen. Or you can come and do the oxygen and just do that and see how you feel. I know people that have become significantly better from long COVID just with the hyperbaric oxygen. So there's all different ways to do it. And, we're a big believer in that. Listen to your heart, listen to your intuition. Then you will absolutely know what you're getting drawn to. Fiona, I have an elder client with almost non-existent pelvic floor, massive gland leakage. Yes, definitely. And also the other person to talk to is my friend Linda. She's phenomenal with that stuff. When you think about it, all that the biotherapies do is they give the body a charge, which is giving it more energy and whatever is wrong with you is the body will start. We don't do the healing, the immune system does. And I always say to people, it's like, if you've not got enough petrol to get to London, you've only got enough petrol maybe to get into the city centre. And what this does is it gives you that energy, that fuel to help you get your health back on track. And what's been interesting for me, who's been pretty much obsessed with this stuff I've been a fitness instructor since I was 18. What the body's doing, nutrition, I hadn't even realised that I needed a bit more energy. Well, I didn't need it. I was doing fine the way I was. But now that I've had that, I'm like, oh wow, I like this. I feel so light in my feet. My friend says I'm like a wee mountain goat. So I think even if you want to lose weight, the other thing is I've lost a bit of weight, which is not a reason I was doing it. I don't like being thin. It's not nice being thin when you're old. You just look older. But there's definitely a weight loss because it's flow, right? So the body can flow, the energy can flow, your metabolism obviously goes up with especially you do your nose breathing with the oxygen, everything works better, everything becomes easier. And that's why we are so passionate about getting you up there and trying it, because, we can, wax lyrically about this all night, that come and try it. And there is a cost, and let's talk about the cost. We've got new memberships which are doing well, because say you invested £1,500 over 3 months, you'd do that in a holiday for 2 weeks. You wouldn't bat an eyelid. I'm doing that. So yeah, and we're looking at ways to make this accessible for people. But right now we just need to get all the proof. We need to educate people. We need to get our own stories. This is a phenomenal thing for Scotland to have a centre like this in our country, where we have the worst health picture in the world. This is a chance for us to really change this. So I'm hugely grateful to Jonathan for setting this up. And now where it's like, how do we get this out to people? So come and see us. Get the check out Health at Home. Talk to us about what you can do in your own community. If you got a community centre, we want to help get this out to the world, to Scotland first, and then beyond.
Yeah, so I think we'd really love to see satellite versions of the hub on all the major cities in Scotland, starting with Scotland, as Lilia said, and for that we need some investment. People need to have some premises, and then we need some staff. The equipment, in a way, is of course part of the cost of setting up a health hub, but it's not the answer without the people that understand why and how to use it. And that, I think, is what I like to think is what sets the health hub aside from other salons that have got a bit of red light, or maybe even a bit of pulse magnetic. The pucker equipment is significantly more of an investment than some of the lesser models and things. But anyway, that is a detail. But we do want the satellite out there. The website for Health at Home is actually healthathomeuk.com. And
I've shared it.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Lilia. And there's going to be lots of things coming to that. So we're going to have all the basic modalities. We started with red light, which we've got, and we've even got red light boxes with different sizes for different dogs. So dogs like these things, and dogs like Pemp as well. They like to lie on the mat and have their sore bones and joints healed like this and helped. So there's lots and lots of things to go at, and you may have some suggestions that you want us to look at and so on. And we've really not touched at all on some of the more complicated conditions that these therapies help with. But we've helped people with COPD, which you can't use hyperbaric on, for example, but they work great with EWAT. We've helped people with something that was probably myalgia or fibromyalgia or ME or something like. And one housewife I remember she was just floored. She just couldn't manage anything. 2 children. And she basically had 6 therapy sessions with the Therolite. And at the end of those 6, she had actually got sufficiently well enough. She was functioning again, running the household again. And 6 weeks after that, she was actually back at the gym, which was extraordinary because she'd been really, really at a very lowest ebb. So, yeah, as Lillian said, if you get that little bit of energy, it's very encouraging to do more. We all feel like going out for a walk more when we've got nice energy.
Well, exactly. And Catherine, you're saying need one in Skye. Well, I'm hoping that John Angus will get one. If he gets the place in Portree, that would be amazing. And yeah, Nikki, you're opening one in Dunoon, that's great. And yes, the islands. And I don't know if my friend Isabel is on, Izzy. She's always asking me to go to Orkney. But yeah, everybody needs to help. You know, you can fundraise and get one in your community. We cannot do everything ourselves. What we really want is to get the education and the inspiration out there. And of course, we're going to have the Heal Together Academy, so that we'll be able to bring people in from all over the country, teach them the skills, and then send them back into their own communities. Because really, you need to be able to access this stuff at community level. It needs to be done regularly. We need to stay well. We've got a long, hard, dark winter in Scotland. So instead of thinking, I need to eat this, don't do that, don't do that, don't do the next thing, just go and lie in a nice red mat and dream beautiful things. So yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Yeah. Yes, that's right, Fiona. You told me that. That's great. Hopefully you're all inspired. We're having a fete, a family fete on the 14th of June. Is that the right date? The 14th, I think. It's a Sunday anyway, and we've got lots of fun things. You can come along, have a tour, have a chat, have a network, you know, get to know all the people that are into this. Let's all pull together and let's not be divided. We need to pull together to make this happen, because, you know, a lot of our people are suffering. There's been a lot of damage done over the last 5 years to our health and beyond. But we really have something that can really help ease anxiety, ease the pain. Alex, I look forward to seeing you, hon. I would absolutely love if we can find a way to help you, because nobody deserves it more. So yeah, great stuff, guys. We are over and out. And remember, just call, email. I'll put the Lee at and organise a free discovery call or a discovery visit. And the phone number is
the hub. You got phone number of the hub.
01505
801313.
801 313.
801313. Yep.
Okay, guys. So please call, come see us. If you want to come and see some of the products for health at home, we've got the mat, and we've also got a cracking red light sleeping bag that is just mint. So yeah. And if you're watching this in replay and you've got any pictures, then any questions, then please just ask and I will keep you up to date. Okay, well, thanks, Jonathan. I shall see you in the morning.
Thanks, Lilia, for brokering this, and it's very nice and lovely to meet you all virtually. And it's funny with Lilia saying, well, hello, Kath, and hello, and having a little chat on the side, because I can't see you all, but it's been very interesting. Thanks for the questions.
It's only me. Thanks, Kia. See you soon. Okay, chat. Bye. Night, guys.